The Mazda MX5 made small sports cars cool again when it launched in 1989, so much so that everyone from Fiat to MG and even BMW got in on the action. Mazda therefore had to sharpen up their act for this, the Mk2 MX5. But is it actually an improvement on the Mk1, or were they better off the first time around? Well, I've come to a very busy and noisy Japfest 2023 to compare this Mk1 to this 10th anniversary Mk2 MX5 to find out. But first, our friends at Lancaster Insurance are running monthly giveaways. You can win all sorts, from experience days to tools, restaurant vouchers and tech. So click the link below at the end of the video to enter their latest competition. The British Classic was pretty fondly remembered in Japan. Cars like the Mini, which of course had enjoyed its own resurgence back in the late 90s, and sports cars like the MGB and the Lotus Elan. While idly chatting to some of Mazda's R&D guys in the late 1970s, American journalist Bob Hall said that that sports car should be reinvented. There should be a new affordable roadster. Mazda decided this was a pretty good idea, so by 1981 they appointed Bob Hall their head of research and development, and he was given the go-ahead to make his affordable sports car project a reality. Mazda took particular influence from the Lotus Elan and bought an original car to take various styling inspirational cues from it. This all came to life in the Duo 101 concept, and it was well enough received at various motor shows it would be made into a production car. Tom Matano was made head of design, and he was told to refine that prototype 101 into a car that could be made ready for production by 1989. And the car that would later be coined the Mazda MX5 was exactly what Bob Hall had envisaged. A modern, refined, reliable Japanese sports car that still looked, to all intents and purposes, like a 60s Brit. By being uncomplicated, just simple curves, those nice sort of boiled sweet style rear lights, that big smiley mouth front grille, and of course those iconic pop-up headlights. Instantly this car is charming. I think Matano got it spot on. Beneath the simple and classic styling, Mazda invoked a clever engineering policy known as Jinbatai. Jinbatai, or person and horse as one body, is a Japanese compound that Mazda uses as its design philosophy. Essentially, they wanted the driver to feel at one with the car, prompting a focus on engineering for feel. One of the key focuses throughout the MX5's development was to give it a 50-50 weight distribution to keep it perfectly balanced, even moving the battery and the spare wheel to the boot, and that means it is so planted. It never feels nervous or twitchy, it's just totally level. The engines were simple too, a 1.6 which was also used in the 323 and this 1.8, but even this big engine version is still only 130 horsepower. It's still not enough go to get yourself in trouble, and that means you're not scared to use it. The steering, particularly if you get one without power steering like this, is lovely. Just perfectly weighted, and it again is eager and darty, much like an MGB for example, but it's not fidgety. Then there's the suspension, double wishbones all the way around, combined with that low weight and lovely steering means the MX5 is a joy to chuck around on an English B road. It just seems perfectly in tune with its environment. It's compliant, it's not bouncing around. The ride is surprisingly comfortable actually. It just flows so nicely. Again, because it's not fast, it's not scary. So whether you're well versed in the ways of sports cars, or this could be your first rear-wheel drive experience, it won't intimidate you, but it does encourage you to just keep pushing that little bit further. So you play with it and you end up with a smile on your face. One of the reasons the hot hatch took over from the sports car in the late 70s and early 80s was practicality. You just couldn't use a lot of those roadsters every day. But the MX5 challenged that stereotype. It's spacious, it's well laid out. I've got a decent amount of storage here. I've got cubby holes, I've got a bit behind the seats, a little shelf, and a decent sized boot. Yet everything that is here works and works well. MGB owners would be jealous of how brilliant the heater is in this thing. You really could use it all year round. It would get 30-35 miles to the gallon, and because it's Japanese and built by Mazda of all people, it would start every morning on the button. Well made and well thought out. In short, it had all the good bits of a classic British roadster, but none of the downsides. And it was affordable too. The MX5 started at less than £14,000. Small wonder the MX5 sold over 400,000 units. Over 30 years on, this car is a classic in its own right, every bit as much as the MGs and Elans that inspired it. There are owners clubs all over the world for these cars, and it's one of the most instantly recognisable car silhouettes. The trouble is that other manufacturers saw the little Mazda's success and they wanted in on the action. There was Toyota with its MR2, the MGF, the Fiat Barchetta, the BMW Z3. So how could the Mazda stave off this rampant roadster rivalry? Now, how do you improve on such a successful everyman formula for a sports car without ruining its mass appeal? Well, the key was evolution rather than revolution. For a start, the NB MX5, as it was codenamed after the Mark 1 was NA, would look different, but only subtly. Pop-up headlights were now banned because they didn't meet pedestrian safety regulations. They were deemed too dangerous if you were to run someone over. So they were styled out in favour of new fixed headlights, but that did bring some advantages. The Mark 2 MX5 was more aerodynamic, which improves acceleration, top speed, and it improves fuel economy. In profile, it was still very much an MX5. It still looked like that classic Lotus Elan inspired shape, but it was just subtly more modern. There were newer rear lights, slightly curvier boot lid. This was again a slightly more modern take on what by this point was an old favourite. So the styling was just subtly modernised then, and so too was the engine. You could get the Mark 2 MX5 with a 1.6, which was all but unchanged over the Mark 1, and the 1.8. Now it had higher compression, a variable intake cam, and a new manifold. And all that took power up from 130 to 140 horsepower. Suspension-wise too, the Mark 2 MX5 of 1998 was subtly improved on the Mark 1 without spoiling it. It got the same lovely all-round double wishbone suspension featuring thicker front and rear anti-roll bars, designed to just keep the body roll a little bit more in check. You also got the option of wider and bigger wheels, and that meant you got more grip, which encouraged you again to push on as you started getting faster. And you could get anti-lock brakes for if you found yourself pushing just a little bit too hard. So do all of these little improvements under the skin add up to a better MX5 then? Well, in many ways, yeah, they do actually. It is subtly faster than a Mark 1, but still doesn't peg you in the seat. You still have to work for every rev, for every bit of horsepower, and you do it by working this fantastically sneaky manual gearbox. It's just that when you do, you're going that little bit faster than you would do in a Mark 1. And as for the suspension improvements, it's still an MX5 again. It still rides well. It's still got that little bit of roll to tell you when you're being a bit of an idiot, but feels that little bit more taut, that little bit more responsive. And it gives you a bit more confidence to chuck it around and fling it from side to side a bit just for the fun of it, which is what a little sports car is all about. It's worth pointing out this isn't a standard Mark 2 MX5. This is a 10th anniversary model, launched in 1999 to celebrate, you guessed it, a decade of Mazda's prodigal child. For that, you got a number of benefits. A 6-speed gearbox, which finally calmed it down a bit on the motorway. You also got new Bilstein shock absorbers, which again contributed to a slightly sharper ride and handling combination. You got a Torsen limited slip differential, which helped it get its power down out of the corners that little bit easier. Visually, you got this gorgeous sapphire blue Mk paintwork, which looks absolutely stunning in my opinion, and polished 15-inch 5-spoke wheels. Inside you got these lovely half leather, half Alcantara seats, a Nardi steering wheel and gear knob, a Bose stereo, and a little bit of carbon fibre on the centre console. Make this lovely little sports car feel that little bit more special. There's a good reason perhaps then that Terry, the owner of this car, bought it new. Why would you get rid? It's fantastic. Even if you strip away the tidbits of the 10th anniversary though, the NB is that much newer inside. You get dual airbags, a curvier, swoopier dash, and a bit more boot space on account of the battery now being in the boot floor rather than to the side of it. By sticking to its evolution rather than revolution ethos, the Mark 2 MX5 was another runaway success. Mazda sold 300,000 of these cars, and during the NB's lifetime, the MX5 became the best-selling two-seater sports car ever. You could argue that the Mark II didn't exactly transform the MX5. It slightly improved the styling, it slightly refined the interior, it gave it slightly better suspension and slightly more power. But for me, that's what makes the NB arguably the better all-rounder, because it takes what was already a brilliant recipe and just adds a little bit more sugar, a little bit more spice, gives it a nicer flavour to it. If you want the more classic car, the one with the iconic look and the original styling, and the one that's going to appreciate in value quicker, then the Mark 1 MX5 is for you, and it's a great choice. But if you want arguably the better car, then I think for MX5s, it was second time's a charm. Woohoo! This video is proudly sponsored by Lancaster Insurance. Give them a call on 01480 400 889 for an insurance quote on your classic car. And don't forget to click the link below to enter their latest competition.